So the topic today is very much around data strategy and value creation. We have prepared some questions we heard from the delegates, but we're also going to try and see if it's possible to have some Q&A, because we haven't had that, to hear from you any questions you might have, and such an interesting panel. I'm sure there are some questions. So no promises yet, but hopefully we're going to have time for one or two questions. So Shin, shall we start with you?
Thanks, Maria. So hi, everyone. I'm Shin from PETRONAS. So I came a long way here from Malaysia. Does anyone know where Malaysia is? Yeah. So PETRONAS is actually a global energy group with presence in over 100 countries. And of course, with that, we generate and we produce a lot of data. We have a very complex data ecosystem. So I look forward to share with you on some of our data strategies and how we monetize that and convert that to value. And of course, a little bit more on myself. Aside from my core role, I'm also very passionate in reducing the gender parity for women in data and AI. So I'm part of the Code Without Barriers movement together with Microsoft. And, you know, across Asia, what we aim to do is to have more women representation, which is still really low, by the way, in Asia countries. So we want more women to be part of this data and AI movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Karolina.
Fantastic. So hi, everyone. I'm super happy to be back here this year again. So my name is Karolina Perzon. I'm head of Insight and Data Office in Telia Analytics. And Telia, I think a lot of you would know as a company. We're one of the leading telco operators in Sweden and in the Nordics. Have quite a lot of legacy, partly in terms of data. But so my team is very much focused around setting the data governance and the strategy for data within analytics, also working with the data and insight self-service, so making sure that we have data and insights readily available for our users. We own and operate our visualization platforms and so on. Very briefly.
Alwyn.
Good morning, Stockholm.
Also from abroad, right?
From abroad, from London, yes, but from Wales. Maybe better question: how many people know where Wales is? But anyway, we can discuss over coffee or a drink. Good work, Greg. So I'm head of data strategy for the Financial Times. So slightly different to PETRONAS, slightly different to Volvo, media and news, but obviously lots of data, and it's a 130-year-old organization, so lots of legacy and lots of history there as well. My role as head of data strategy is helping utilize the data. So where's the value? How do people engage? And looking at innovative ways to use it. And Gen AI is a massive one of innovation. So it's how do we use that?
Thank you. Greg, I don't know if anyone doesn't know you by now, but...
I don't know, I see some new faces. So my name is Greg Hanson, so I'm Group Vice President for Informatica across EMEA and Latin America. So what does that mean? Well, when you think about those disciplines of data management, like integration, quality, mastering, and so on, I have teams of specialists in all of those areas that I manage across that geography. So that's me.
So today we thought of starting by talking about how do we run a successful data strategy, right? And the importance of leadership. So it would be very interesting to hear from you. Not only the top executives, right? But also how do you feel that cascades down in the organization, the middle management part, and to hear your experiences. Ying, shall we start with you?
Okay, so just to share, right, for PETRONAS, as mentioned earlier, we operate in a very vast and complex data landscape, right? So one of the issues that we face for 45 years now is that data sharing has always been an issue, right? We have across 300 subsidiaries, and each of the subsidiaries have their own CEOs or management directors, and everyone is very protective of their data. And as a result, we see a lot of hindrance, a lot of barriers towards creating value from data, right? So it was only 2 years ago we started this movement called the Data Liberalization Movement. We got our executive leadership team to come together and say, hey, we need to now liberalize our data across the entire company, across 50,000 people. And actually, I've got to say, we got very strong support all the way to the president himself. And this movement was signed by 300 CEOs across the world. And 3 years later, 3 years till today, we see that there's a lot of traction from this program, right? Because imagine in the past, if I need to get hold of a data, I need to get 50, 60 signatures, right? And imagine the kind of value that you wouldn't be able to create with that slow movement. So with this in place, by default, everyone must be able to share their data, right? And if you don't want to share data, you got to justify why you don't want to share data. So with this movement in place, this is one of the key strategy that we really see help to be the game changer in how we manage our data here in PETRONAS.
That's very interesting because we talk about data democratization, but most companies run it the other way around, that it's not possible to share data unless. So you went completely
the other way around.
Route, that all data is shareable unless.
Unless you
Wonderful.
justify.
And the sponsorship of the executive team, it's really inspiring.
Yeah.
Karolina, how is it?
In Telia, yeah. Well, I think one of the aspects I was sort of reflecting ahead of this, what will be, what is the key pieces of getting a data strategy going, really. And I think one of my reflections is that I completely agree, executive management support is key, but also getting the general organization to understand the need for a data strategy, right? So your, developer community, your data scientists and so on. Because I think in a lot of cases, maybe not so much data strategy, but when we talk about data governance and so on, it's seen as this, cumbersome thing that we have to do before we get to the good parts, right? But then so changing that mindset, so to see it as an enabler, to see it as something that will actually accelerate the work that we do within analytics. I think that's really important because having, developers work with you is a much smoother ride than the opposite.
So culture, right? And the saying, right, that culture it's strategy for breakfast. And,
yeah, for sure.
Very much what you're pointing. Alwyn, your experience, how has it been? Because it's a completely different area. I think this is such interesting panelists, right? Completely different, not only just countries, but industries and hopefully experiences as well.
Yeah, thank you. That culture word is really important. But knowing that at the Financial Times we put in place a new CDO 6 months ago, and that has really accelerated what we're able to do on the buy-in. So for the last 4 years, the chief exec has said, well, the Financial Times is data-driven, but he's dependent on his execs to tell him how that works. Your point about the middle management people is something I care deeply, both the people in data and analytics, but also the people in the business who engage with it. So how do they understand? How do they use it? And it's interesting you called out middle management because that's one of the challenging areas which I see because they will go, well, we have our other priorities to do. Data's not important because I need to get subscriptions or I need to get advertising targets met. It's not about the data. Not realizing that actually the data drives all of that. The customer product managers, when they create new products which our customers engage in, they're very data-driven in that they'll analyze the behaviors, the users, what topics they read, what content is available to them. But when they collect more information, they tend to, we just need to quickly put it in a data store somewhere without seeing how that flows into our data lifecycle. So there's still a lot to change, and that cultural piece is still work in progress, and it will always be. There's no end point. When you get to a good place, you then need to go, well, where do we go next? So that leadership is really important, but it is both top-down and bottom-up, that you have the people who are engaging with the data, classifying, or whether they're in domains or needing to update in the data catalog what the definitions mean. It's really important across the board.
The beauty of the top management or the executive sponsorship is that it's not just for inspiration, right? It is connected with resources, for example. And that will have an impact in your investments, in your recruitment, in your training. So it's actually not something that, it's not just a North Star view, but also how do you get there? So it can be quite impactful. Greg, any thoughts from you on this?
Yes, I mean, I've got the luxury of working with many companies and across many industries, which is really interesting to see the differentiation between different approaches. But looking at it, I think it's so crucial to start off with good sponsorship right from the start. I would say, and we were talking about a gentleman who we both know used to be a CDO of one of the biggest financial institutions in the UK and Ireland, and he had a problem where he had to almost sell the vision of data internally, and it just consumed all his time trying to sell why we're doing this. So you need that sponsorship to eradicate that. And that means setting a vision. And it's a company vision, like we heard from Volvo earlier on. It's about how the company's transforming and what a vital part of the foundation data is to get there. And then I thought I'd just give you some illustrations, because I think we're all used to seeing a data strategy, especially in this room. But how do you get that data strategy off the page? How do you make it real life? And how do you keep it going, I think is the key thing. And so some of the things I've seen from the management support is making sure when we do in one of the investment banks in London that I work with, what they do as part of their regular town hall meetings is they celebrate success. And they are linking improvements in data quality and the democratization, and I loved your word around the liberalization of data. They're celebrating, they're giving examples of the impact that it's making to the business. We've got less customer churn, we've got more turnover of our advertising, marketing campaigns, and they're doing that. Another big airline that we're working with, the CEO now, if someone brings him a piece of data, a report, analytics, he says, is this certified data or not? And what he means by that is he's got a watermark that appears on anything that he sees. And if it's gone through the data products teams and it's democratized through the framework, it's certified. If it isn't, he'll look at it, but he won't trust it. And he'll challenge where they've got the data from. And then finally, one thing that's worked quite well is getting to value quickly. Don't try and boil the ocean. I think, CDO version 1.0 was, let's try and be compliant, as you put it. But that takes a long time. And really, you need to deliver value quickly and break it down into small sprints, focus on a smaller business outcome and deliver that, and then grow. Yeah.
So let's take that one. And you share that very inspirational view that, data could actually be democratized and speed. But how do others handle this balance, right, between compliance and democratization? What are your key strategies here that you found to be quite productive and effective?
I think for us it's a lot about sort of creating clarity and visibility. So we've done two things which I would say have been very effective. One is from more of the insights perspective, simplifying the overview of our application portfolio, our insight portfolio, right? So talking about, first of all, of course, what insights are available to our users, but then which ones should they use? Which ones are verified, like you said, what data can you trust in this? So making that very clear and having them be quite comfortable in using the insights for decisions and so on. So I think that is super important. The second thing that we've done and are focusing very much on now is, of course, setting, the foundation for a strong data governance. And that is, I think, a key, foundation for everything. But recently, we've focused a lot on ensuring that, the descriptions that we have going along with our data, that it's written in a business-friendly language, right? So, making it understandable not only for developers, but for all. Making sure that we connect our business glossary to the actual, physical data assets. So I think, enabling maybe more business-focused users, not only to look at readily prepared insights, but actually dare to take a step closer towards the data as well. And
you have, you have established a data operating model already at Telia, or?
Well, I think it's always a work in progress, right? I'm very hesitant to ever say we're done. No, but we have established a data governance framework, data management framework. We're working with information management and so on. So I would say we're sort of setting the foundation. We're still, doing a lot of tweaks and improvements along the way.
But that might be a good thing, right? Because it's one thing when you strategize in the clouds on what it should be, but then when you go into execution, you're going to find a lot of new challenges and issues that you need to address and bring it into the data operating model. So actually it creates value to the organization.
Yeah. And I think that's really a key, sort of just, you have to get going. You can plan, and strategize forever, but you need to get going, you need to try your way, see, like you said, what obstacles will we have. I think one thing I try to stay away from is aiming for perfection. Like I like already, it's early in the morning, I'm already super inspired by the talks that we've had. But I think, aiming for, like when we talk about data quality, like we need to have top-notch data quality. Do we really? Is that value for money, or is it higher cost than it is, value? So trying to find this also, the good enough level, and then strive for that in the first round.
So, Alwyn, what are other key success factors for you in terms of the Financial Times strategy for data?
It's the ease of access to data and understanding it. 2 years ago, we implemented, it took 2 years to democratize our data with a few new products, BI tools, allowing people to get more engaged with the data. But one of the key things we do as well is we embed our analysts with teams within the business. So we talk a lot about data literacy, but it's the business literacy as well. And they get to understand, they're sitting in the editorial team. What are the editorial team looking at? Why are they doing it? And what information do they need? And what that helps them with is, it's kind of a halo effect where the analyst does, well, I go this, and this. And the team around go, all right, well, I can do that. And I can do that, okay, I don't do the other one. But so they can develop and they grow, and it's that confidence and capability, the flow in the work they do, and they're able to do that. We've launched a data academy, with how do I analyze, what does it mean when you see indicators? It's been helped a lot by AI, because one of the modules is understanding generative AI. So it's been very popular, the Data Academy, but when people go in to look for that topic, they're also looking at all the other topics, and there's workshops, there's different type of content, there's videos, there's documents to read. So there's a bit of everything for it, because we all learn differently. And yeah, there's a lot already today I've taken in, and hopefully a lot more to come. And that's really important, that we're all different, and we need to engage that, but the making it available, make it understood, and helping people do it themselves is really going to help us moving forwards.
It's interesting because you're also referring that there is an impact in the way we work and potentially in the operating model of companies, because we had previously the data scientists, data engineers, data architects in a single unit, and now you're seeing much closer to the business, right? Where they have a much increased or improved proximity, more collaboration, and it's not us and them. Do you see that as improving as well?
It does improve, and it's that engagement. And also, we had a few teams would have their own data scientist, and which is good. But it created problems. They used different tools, they had different standards. So over the last year, that they've been aligned. So they're still sitting in those teams, but now they're more aligned to the centralized Centre of Excellence, if you want to call it that, team. But back to the point and the topic, that the value creation, the value is with those teams. So be it a recommended product to people who are visiting our site, then the work for that happens with our data scientists working with our team.
That's almost provocative what you've just said. The value is with that teams. Can I ask you to elaborate? Are we not moving to a decentralized value approach? Not according to Financial Times. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine, and it's a good question, because we're very much in trying to quantify that value. How much is our data asset worth? How many decisions? So as I mentioned to somebody earlier on, I've interviewed product managers, and they're like, what kind of, I said it here. So we are data driven. So how much of the decisions they take are based on the data they use? How much of it is based elsewhere? So it's trying to share out that value, So if it's 100,000, a million, how much of that is related to the data and the decisioning? How much of it is the capability, that embedded analyst? So, you know, as an example, somebody said, well, 20% probably of our value is generated by the data. But if we had an embedded analyst, it would probably be 40%. So that drives the business cases then go, okay, well, do we now need to roll this out wider? Yeah, value is what they want to have. The data is the means to get the right decision, the insight to get that value.
So we'll let the value part be the last part of our talk. So we make sure that you guys stay awake during the whole panel. And let's talk. You also mentioned about ensuring that everyone knows how to use analytics, and they are part of this movement, asking for improvements, having a better understanding now with the AI coming. So how do you see that? What specific initiatives do you have in your organizations to improve enablement and adoption?
I think for us it's sort of continuing the work that we've started, making data understandable for all. I think very much like communicating success cases, that is very inspirational also for everyone to see, oh, this is actually possible, this is something that we could do. So I think, like you said, how much of decisions is really based on data today. I think we need to, it's not necessarily conscious that we would say, I'll ignore the data and go with my instincts, but rather, we might not be aware of what we could get with the data. So I think bringing then analytics and the business closer together, I think is really key. Partly so that analytics can understand the business, and provide better suggestions and better guidance for what is possible, but also for the business to become more comfortable, I like to say, working with data.
Karolina, do you have any specific data literacy programs? Do you have it across, for example, for executives, for the business? Anything happening at Telia in this respect?
So we've had some. We also have, we work with cross-functional teams working with the business. In Telia, we operate across 6 different markets, so we have cross-functional teams in each, where there's continuous, learning and sharing. I think we will want to drive a more dedicated literacy program as well. I think specifically, related to, of course, AI will be in itself, I think, one. But I think looking at, the insights, looking at who do we want to work with, what type of data. Because I think it's easy also to say, we want to be data-driven, but what does that mean for, sales leadership versus customer service? We need to look at how we treat different type of user groups and what expectations we have for the use of data in each.
So it's probably an area for improvement.
For sure.
But Greg, how do you see it? You're more like a technology guy, right? So how do you see that? Because in the end, it's not about technology, truly, right? If we are aiming to create value, it's all about adoption, and you cannot have it without literacy. So how do you see companies addressing that? Do you still see them very much with the eye and focus on technology and that excitement of the tangible technology, or do you see them more and more aware of the importance of data literacy in the success of the data strategy?
It's fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental. I talked a little about earlier on when I was on stage talking about how GPT potentially crosses that chasm. Because as a technology vendor, if you've got no users or you've got no business, all right? So, and increasingly, as we want to democratize from a technology vendor perspective, we have to invest in technology that can be leveraged by business users, right? So in the past 5 years, you've seen the emergence of not developer screens, but now we call things like citizen scientists, citizen analysts, citizen developers. That in itself was a kind of early adopter illustration of how we need to put those tools in a much more simplified manner into the hands of an average business user. And now what we're seeing right now is a significant growth in technologies like data marketplace technologies, where you've got a catalog that's cataloging your assets, and our marketplace becomes the shop front where the data consumers meet the data producers. Back to Dr. Alex's slide there. And I think you'll see that as a foundational, important piece of your armory when it comes to connecting business users with data products and your data teams. And then there's a really good example which we can share if anyone wants to come talk to me afterwards, but Rolls-Royce Civil Aerospace, they're a really good example of how the right choices in terms of your technology foundation can help with your literacy program. Because using that strategy, what they've been able to do is build a community of more than 1,800 users across their organization that they've given training, given literacy, have a community of interest and a group which shares information. But now they're reaping the rewards. They estimate that they've got more than $100 million, £100 million worth of value from data now. And they've got more than 1,800 apps that their data community has built, not their technology teams, right? So we're really starting to see scale of adoption by the business in that sort of group. So, more than happy to talk about that later if anyone wants to come find me.
Thank you. PETRONAS, what are you doing there in terms of data literacy, or do you think that there is a level of maturity that you have reached already?
Well, actually, as recent as 3 years ago, data, AI, all these are seen as the realm of the data team or even the IT team, right? And we had a huge amount of work that we knew needed to be done to change this culture, right? Because if this goes on, and obviously the data team is only a small team, right? We can't cater to the needs of 50,000 people. So 2 years ago, we started a citizen program. So what we call is the Citizen Analytics Program. And that was a turning point for us, right? Because we got 10,000 people who signed up for it. And these people start to learn the basics of data fundamentals, analytic fundamentals, and they can start embedding AI into their ways of working. And that's what we want, right? Because it's not about data and AI, it's not about building applications, right? It's about how do you use these to change the way you work. For example, we have seen engineers now studying what sort of data that they now need to understand better, what are the metadata that they need to capture better in order to make their work processes more seamless. So it's simple tweaks like that, right, that we see a game changer. And of course, you may wonder what happened to our data science team, right? So what we are pivoting right now in terms of strategies, our data science team will now focus on carrying out high-value tasks, right? High-value applications development. And we want to ensure that the basic data and AI fundamentals, it's commoditized across the entire company. So because of the success of the Citizen Analytics Program, we have also launched the Citizen Developer Program because, again, we don't want the data scientists to be just developing small applications and it bogs down their time, right? So, again, we see that tremendous potential for the business who they already know their data best, right? So they can learn the basics and start to develop their own applications that suits their specific needs.
That's very, very interesting because we see many times that we are trying to find a problem for the technology that we have available instead of understanding and prioritizing the business problems that exist and then finding solutions for them. So empowering the business to do that analysis and selection, and that's a very important shift, right?
Yeah. So, of course, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It took us 3 years to really see changes in the business. But I've got to say, we've got to start somewhere, right? It's progress over perfection, and we'll definitely get there. Yeah.
Can I just jump in? I think it's advocacy as well. So in different parts of the business where they've succeeded and they're able to talk to other, because it's all data, you're always telling us how great you are, how much value the data drives, but they need to see it in their own eyes. And definitely in the Financial Times, they want to see an example where it's been done before. So if you're talking about data mesh or federated data governance, they're going, well, who else has done it? So it's when you get the successful use cases, you get them showing off what we've done, and that is helping us as data and analytics, but helping us as an organization to move that on. Because all data is connected, but it's the people who connect it, and it's the people who have that connection, even though they'll say that they're very different products, they need to do things in different ways, but they can start to see how standardization and making sure that we're using the same information in the same way is helping us identify more longer-term ambitions.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I had another question for you guys now, and that's how do we if we have a clear data strategy, we have executive sponsorship, right? We invest in enablement. We talked about data literacy, and ultimately we resolve clear business problems in the organization. That means, of course, that we increase the value of the companies that we are working for. So how are you measuring that? And are you, to start, let's be honest, we probably should start on, are you measuring value today? In what areas specifically? And how do you do that? I think that would be the last question, I think, from the panel.
I'm happy to go ahead, and it's probably work in progress. There are areas where we're able to measure more effectively. We do a fair bit of experimentation, and we spend a lot of effort in allocating the value to that experimentation, what's succeeded and what is the value of that success. Still work in progress across the board. With our BI tools, when we democratized, we looked at productivity increases and efficiency saving by doing that. So they're just a couple of examples, but there's still an awful lot more to do.
But you are already looking at the company OKRs, right? The new. So you're connecting the data initiatives to the company OKRs in any way?
Yeah. So that we have one company objective, and we have a metrics pyramid. So whatever a team does, be it increase subscriptions, click-through rates on ads, they all drive to that one key business objective.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think we have some similar ways of looking at the return on investment for this as well. And I think especially some areas like, say, MarTech, where we look at, we have a big focus on having the best customer experience, right? So how can we provide better offers and so on? And this often has, a good return on that investment in terms of having, more people buying, upgrades or whatnot. But I think that is one area where it's easier to measure, and I think that is also where we would want to highlight this, to showcase, like, this is one example. But I think all in all, it's very difficult. I mean, it's infinitely more easy to measure costs in this area than it is, what is the benefit of having good business decisions based on proper data, rather than the alternative cost of having business decisions based on poor data quality. I don't even want to imagine the cost of that. So I think this is something that we are consistently thinking about, and I think if someone has a great answer, grab me afterwards.
I think there's some round tables on the topic. Yeah. I heard, with some very interesting view on how the technology is evolving to actually capture and document that value that is creating while implementation. Shin, how about you?
Yeah, so for us, measuring value didn't come as something that we see that we need to do immediately, right? Especially 2-3 years ago, because it was fairly easy to justify to the management to say, hey, data is now really critical. So these are the investment that we need to put in place for these sort of initiatives. But fast forward 3 years later, today, this year especially, the management starts to wonder and say like, hey, so I put in this much of investment, what am I seeing in terms of value, right? And that's where this year we start to be very conscious in terms of how we measure our value. So we look at value from 3 angles, right? One is in terms of the monetary gains, right? So this can be from the, for example, savings in terms of processes or any tangible or monetary value we can gain from our data initiatives. And it can also be from the angle of productivity or efficiency improvement, as Alwyn mentioned earlier, right? But secondly, we also see the importance of measuring adoption, right? Especially now that we have our own data marketplace. How is the user sentiment like? Because we do not want to have a data marketplace where people just come in once and then not wanting to come back ever again, right? So that's the second way that we measure value, to show management to say that this product is generating value for PETRONAS as a whole. And thirdly, of course, in terms of the user experience, because a lot of times we get so bogged down in just, delivering data products to everyone. We forgot, to ask people whether, are you experiencing it the way that we would like you to experience it, or are there tweaks that we should make? So it's a continuous and iterative process to ensure that we give them the experience that they need, because at the end of the day, it ties back to democratization, to the citizen programs, right? If we want the business to do this in a sustainable manner, we got to give them products, we got to deliver initiatives that actually benefits them and they actually have a good experience out of it.
Yeah, user experience we haven't had the opportunity to talk about. But
I've got a quick example I might want just to add on to something you're saying. So one of the big telco companies we've been working with in the UK, they're kind of a multi-channel, they've got telco, they've got broadband, Wi-Fi, all that kind of good stuff. But when you think about their company strategy, some of the key pillars of their company strategy are to get a better net promoter score, and also to have better customer satisfaction. So that's the pillars of their company. But how do you break that down to what you do as the data management team? So working with them, yes, you develop your strategy, and when you break it down, fundamentally, one of the things that you need is good, honest data quality. I take your point around what level you need it at. I agree with that. But then how does measuring net promoter score to data quality at the bottom level? Well, it's very difficult because it takes time. Right, so you've got to break it down into shorter sprints. So working with them, what they finally decided to do is to focus on implementing the right strategy, technology choices, but breaking it down into sprints. And one of the key sprints that they did initially was focusing on a use case which was marketing response rates, which was directly correlated to the data quality of customer data that they had. So they focused on the data quality and then measured the impact on response rates, which then over time impacted customer satisfaction and net promoter score. So you saw that sort of progression from starting small and then impacting company value.
Thank you for sharing, Greg. I think this goes along with what Alwyn was also saying, the importance of benchmark, right? That you might find champions in your own organization that are already doing something and they can speak about that, because we're always biased, right? It's like talking about our own kids. They're always the best, the most, the smartest, most looking kids, So it's always best when we find those champions in the business, but also outside as well, right? And today is a great opportunity for that, to look at best practices, what others are doing, what some of the partners can deliver in terms of value and new technology. I think we have 43 seconds. I would still like to keep my promise. So if we have anyone with a question that would like to be answered.
Hello. My name is Saranda. I'm with the organizers. So we can have 1 to 2 maybe. There is now a coffee break. There will be some drinks and refreshments like in the expo area, but we can take 1 to 2.
Thank you so much.
If you don't like to skip.
So make me proud. Come on.
Yeah.
This is an amazing panel.
So just raise your hand.
This.
Because otherwise there was a question on Agorify for
a question
one.
here at the front.
Yeah, so I might as well read that if you don't mind. Yeah, no, I will. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. This is a really great panel, and I would like to ask a question that now everyone is kind of looking at Gen AI data. Lot of hype, lot of demands, lot of requirement from business value perspective. How do you guys manage these heavy demands with technology limitations that we have?
I think for us, I completely agree with you. Heavy demand is a lot of buzz around it. I think for us, it's approaching it in a responsible way. I think to have that clarity in terms of that we need to do this in the right way from privacy compliance perspective, but also in terms of responsibility of the outcomes of this. Is it trusted, the outcomes of this? Is the data quality good enough to use as input for AI and so on? So I think it is also partly sort of breaking it down into pieces. So again, trying to, get practical, get going. So not to sort of lose the hype, if you will, or, not to create frustration, but then to do it in smaller pieces to show value and then show progress. I think that's key. So keep the momentum going, but not take too big of a bite to start.
One more only.
I've just, while you're finding another question, Perzon, from a technology vendor point of view, we're investing lots in respect to GPT, and just give you an illustration over there. But one thing it's already started to do is increase the awareness of the amount of education that needs to happen on expectations, because although it's a new gadget, people will think of it as a silver bullet, but when you start to do things like embed large language learning models, those large language models are outside of your company. So one of the first things you need to realize is, have you got privacy issues? You know, back to this thing around data governance and where your data reside, the sovereignty of data. And that's the education piece, because people aren't aware of the impact or the implications of using large language learning models. And so that's one of the fundamental things that we're doing right now with our customer base is educating. Although we've got technology here, is it stuff that they can use right now for their specific use cases? Yeah, so that's what we're spending a lot of time doing now.
Can I jump in as well? So we implemented a policy, just a lot of guidelines, that education 6 months ago on generative AI and how to use it. But the other thing we've done, and I was loving the AI confessions tomorrow night, it's basically, if you think you've used the tool inadvertently, let us know. There's no issue. That's been quite good in finding tools which people are using to transcribe meetings, and the summaries are created, so the content of the meeting goes off and then a summary comes back. But that, our intellectual property, obviously with editorial, there's a lot of AIs looking like search engines to go and pull that content to use it elsewhere. So it's getting that visibility and that education, like Greg said, it is really important.
So maybe a question which you can try to answer very concise, because it can also be a long answer. Very simple question. What are your top executives expecting from you, and how do you shape and manage these expectations?
Well, maybe I can share first, right? In a short answer, our top executives are always expecting more value, right, coming from what we do. In fact, there's always this buzzword called 10x. Whatever that we invest, we have to get 10 times return in value. So, of course, for us in the data and AI team, it's very important to focus our initiatives on the initiatives that bring value, right? Or as you mentioned in your presentation just now, focus on the right data products, because a lot of times when we started this journey, there's this tendency to want to manage everything, right? We are talking about, we have 32 petabytes of data that we generate, right? And we can't possibly look at them all. So we start to focus on data that is very critical, especially for us in the oil and gas industry, health and safety data, engineering data, procurement data. So these are data domains that we want to manage, and because we know that these domains, if we manage it right, can create more value for the company as a whole.
So in a word, it's value.
Yeah, value.
10x.
Yeah.
But value. So everyone has around, Karolina, how is it for Telia?
I'll add, and I'll try to keep it very short. Speed, maybe I'll add to that, value. So I think it's looking at, we want to get good traction. We want to be able to use this in the business. We want to see, the results as quickly as possible. So I think that is something that we, always try to look at, how can we provide that, but also do it in a sort of safe and governed way.
The tricky balance.
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer. Success is what they want from us. And how do we do that? I think that comes back to us. So looking at the different use cases across the business, for me, marketing and ads, is very important. So how do we enable them to better understand the data, to better use the data, use AI to put the right product in front of our audience, to be successful for us then?
Okay, and be a key enabler then.
Definitely.
Okay. Greg, any thoughts?
One other thing that I would say is just add on to what the panel said, was something different, right? And because what they're looking to me from internally is we've got access to all this, and we've got the data science teams like you've got, we've got the metrics like you have, but they're looking for us as leaders to do something different, and that's the outcome, that's the output. It's about innovation, right? So how that translates for me in terms of my product portfolios and so on, is I take the data, I talk to the customers, I analyze the data. I'm using AI to sort of crunch as well and to predict. And that's driving our product strategy moving forward. Because what we need to do is invest our R&D dollars, just like PETRONAS invests their R&D dollars, in the right buckets to drive that innovation and that differentiation. And that, in the modern digital economy, that's going to differentiate the leaders from the losers. The ability to interpret the data, to create innovation and create differentiation.
I think this was a great way to wrap up. So we talked about innovation, value, speed, and being a key enabler for the business, right? Thank you so much for staying with us this morning. Please, let's enjoy the coffee, eat something, and get ready for the round tables. Thank you.
Thank you.